Good afternoon, everyone. We are continuing our series of conversations with feminist activists and organizers and academics. And today we have Ms. Tara Ramoutar with us. We're very happy to have Tara. We know Tara most for her work in CAFRA, but Tara's work extends throughout many more organizations, and Tara has been a mentor to many younger women coming up in the feminist movement in Trinidad. So let's welcome Tara.
Thank you.
We're starting today with who is Tara. So tell me about Tara growing up. What about your community? What about your family? Talk to me about that a little bit.
Okay, Tara is the fifth child of Sonia Ramoutar and Ramoutar Rampol, who grew up in Forest Avenue, Coquet Village in San Fernando. Most of my childhood was spent in Forest Avenue, and it was a mixed community and a real community. My parents were cane farmers and gardeners. So we ate what we grew. After they cut the cane, they would plant rice and ground provision, peas, corn, cucumbers, pumpkin, you name it. We fed ourselves, and we also fed the people living on the street. Right, we had a lot of animals also, cows, ducks, fowls, right. We supplied milk to the entire street. People who wanted manure came by us for manure. My father also had a horse and a cart which he used to get the cane from the garden when they cut it to the usine St. Madeleine mill. Right, and that was the birthing of me. Being the fifth child, I don't know, somehow or the other I became conscious at a very early age, and I was very vociferous. My mother tried to quiet me down, my father tried to quiet me down, but I couldn't stay quiet. I couldn't see advantage being taken of people. I just grew with that passion. And my father encouraged it to some extent, because during those early years, they broadcasted the Parliament sittings on the radio, no television at that time. And my father put on the radio, and he would listen to every single person. And then you couldn't do anything else. You had to sit there and listen with him. And then a conversation started after that. Coming down to the sports now, it was the same thing. With the cricket, with the boxing, with Muhammad Ali, sometimes a fight taking place late in the night. And I say, I'm going to bed. He'll come and wake up, the fight ready to start. So I have to look at the fight with him, and then a discussion again takes place. So that's how I just grew and developed along those lines.
Tara, we're talking a little bit about pre-independence, and you spoke about moments and people around that period that struck you and formed your consciousness.
All right, during the pre-independence era, it was a struggle between the then bus workers who were owned by a private company, the Mohammed brothers. The government was trying at that time to nationalize that bus company, and the formation came into being of the Transport Industrial Workers Union, who was leading that struggle to localize the bus industry. So out of that became this union with people like Jo Young, Krishna Gowandan, it was the late 60s that we had the army mutiny, and the uprising was taking place everywhere, and consciousness started to build. And you were going to school and hearing your teachers talking about apartheid in South Africa. That was your history lesson, right? So you knew all about a man named Nelson Mandela and what was happening in Soweto and things like that, and people, men, women, and children marching up and down the streets and being killed. After that, you had the 1970s coming into being with the Caribbean students in Canada fighting to be recognized and for their rights and justice, which spilled over into all the universities in the Caribbean. A lot of strong women came to the forefront. I was working on High Street in a shoe store called Bata Shoe Store, which most of you would have heard about. And the union was organizing the workers there, so we had to take strike action in order to get recognition. And during those days, marching up and down the streets and holding a placard was very, very popular. It was happening everywhere. And I left Bata and became strongly associated with the Transport Industrial Workers Union during that time. I worked in the office, but being a member of the staff, the office staff, you grew and you developed there. And when the union had struggles at Amalgamated Industry, Southern Sales, Neil and Massey Car Plant, which have all closed down now, and Sisson Paints, Penta Paints, Trackmark Engineering, Fay Paper Products, which I don't even think exists again, Pons in El Socorro, Pons International, right? Workers were really, really being underpaid and taken advantage of and things like that. And in those factories would have been mainly female workers, right? So being in the union, you became conscious of struggles that were taking place locally, regionally, and internationally. And it was easy to identify. Once you have the passion to take you forward, it was like a driving force. And you became so conscious of democracy, fair play, equity, and gender justice. So out of these unions sprang the Women's Arm. And the men in the Transport Industrial Workers Union, I must say, they encouraged the women to come to the forefront and be shop stewards and branch presidents and secretaries and treasurers of the unions. And we've had some very good women, strong women, coming out of those industries and being executive members of the union. So that is where I grew and developed and I felt so powerful and strong. I felt I could have conquered the world and make it a safe place and end poverty and inequity and things like that. So that's where I just came out of the bowels of the trade union movement, I would say, during those early years.
Tara, how did your family greet your activism?
That's another story. During the early years, the cane farmers, the 74 to 75 period, the cane farmers wanted a union for themselves. And this trade union was being led by men like Rafiq Shah, Budram Jatton, Winston Leonard, who is deceased now. And they had meetings and marches throughout the country because the government of the day was recognizing more the sugar workers and not the cane farmers who wanted more money for their cane, because the cane farmers grew a different kind of cane which was more rich than the sugar workers, than Caroni cane. It was of the cane farmers' cane were of better quality than Caroni, right? So they needed to be paid more for a ton of cane when they take it to the factory. So, and they wanted a union, to be unionized and to have a voice in the whole thing. So Rafik Shande formed this union, which was supported by the Transport Industrial Workers Union, later on the OWTU. So in March of 1974, they had a march during the streets of San Fernando, kicking off from the Paramount building in San Fernando. I was going to school at the time, right? And I did not go to school that morning. I tell my mother, I say, look, I am going to Paramount building. I have to be in that march. I can't see myself not being there, right? My mother said, child, you know what you're doing? I said, yeah, man, it have strong people there who protecting me. I go in. So I put on no school uniform. I put on my jeans and my T-shirt, and I go down the road. You're in Paramount building, right? We kicked off about 10 o'clock in the morning or something like that, left OWTU headquarters. And when we reached on the coffee, out jumped a barrage of policemen with Commissioner Ramoutar in front of the march, and I was right there, right? These men had shields and bayonet and tear gas and everything you could think about, right? Ramoutar them came on the microphone. This is an illegal march and you have to disperse immediately. And we just stood up there waiting for them to clear the way. We had to go forward, right? So they did in fact open tear gas. Trade union leaders dispersed and everything, right? People get tear gas in their face, but we were also briefed on what to do in the event that tear gas came, right? So people seek refuge in lawyer office on High Street there. The cane farmers were using TIWU's office on Coffee Street there, so we went in there. And we were all over the place. Now, evening time come, you can't find George Weeks, you can't find Joe Young, Rafik Shah is nowhere to be found, you can't find Winston Leonard, nobody, right? So I did not get home until about, 6 o'clock in the evening, after leaving home, early morning, going down to Paramount building, right? So when I reached home now, my father, we had a house with, in those days, they had the houses with pillars, posts, so it was a high house. Underneath was empty. So my father sat down in a chair underneath the house, waiting for me. Me and brother with he downstairs, I woke up the front steps and went inside, right? My mother said, child, you're all right? I said, of course, I good, man, I good. So my father come upstairs. Where were you? You didn't go to school today. I said, but so-and-so was taking place. I couldn't go to school. I had to be there. So that was that. So my father now had the radio and listened to every single thing, right? And we were following it up. Although he criticized me for being active so physically, he was behind the sidelines on the radio, listening to everything, and he encouraged me by discussing the politics with me, so I had to get involved. And out of all of that, then emerged the United Labour Front, which was a party formed by trade union leaders, workers and farmers, right? Which contested the elections in 1976, 77, and where you saw that what came forward was ordinary men and women, right, fought elections, and were in fact made, a cane farmer was a member of parliament for Barrapo. Base Pandey had, and they had nominated a cane farmer woman from Barrapo, Dora Bijmohan Singh, as a senator, opposition senator in the House, because they had just gotten a few seats, right? And following that era, you have parents who were very critical, yet silently supporting. And I was like, being the fifth child, I was like a strong pillar for my younger brothers and sisters, and also my older brothers and sisters. There was just one sister before me and three brothers before me, right? But I always spoke out against injustice, you know, and some of them found my mother, in fact, she was always scared of something happening to me, you know, you are a child, you're not supposed to be so vocal. You're not supposed to speak out and condemn, people in high office and stuff like that.
Tell me when your activism changed, well not changed, grew to become very active with the women's movement.
All right, it was during the years of the Transport Industrial Workers Union when we had the women's arm, right? And you then become much more conscious about women and what their sufferings, and you just wanted them to be treated fairly and for equality. That's what you were asking for. Out of that came the Concerned Women for Progress, which was formed by people like Professor Mohammed and Pat Bino, Gayatri Pargas, Linda Rajpal, Carol Gobin, Kathy Shepard was a member of that also. And during that time, I think we were quite instrumental. It was the year that Penny Commission had won Miss Universe, or was it Miss World? And during March 8, in fact, prior to that, during March 8, we used to have marches from Independence Square. It was not Brian Lara Promenade at that time. From Independence Square, we were holding placards, and how much, about 25 of us would be marching through the streets of Port of Spain, going down Independence Square, up Henry Street, coming across and coming down Frederick Street. So we were the first to start demonstrating on March 8 and commemorating that day, because now we can look back and say, but it's like nothing now, and you even hear men now saying, but women don't have to struggle again, they don't have to do anything, they have everything. But do you know and understand what took place during those early years for us to have what we have today and what we still have to achieve? You know, so it was that kind of consciousness with the Concerned Women for Progress. And also out of that, we had the consumer protection movement coming out of that, which I was very instrumental in also. Cynthia Reddock and I were two of the key persons in that organization. And we even sat down and wrote our constitution for the organization and things like that. I was also involved, while in trade union, also involved in the Cuba Friendship Association at that time with James Millett, Michael Aberdeen, and Mario Alves and Vincent Cabero and guys like that.
I'm going back to the CWP.
Right, the Concerned Women for Progress.
Because I want to know, paint a picture for us in terms of what was going on in Trinidad at the time. What were the issues that the CWP felt? What were the burning issues that needed to be tabled around feminist activism?
One of those was that women should be respected and treated equally. Right, that was one of the issues. The other issue was food prices were always an issue with women. And hence the reason we formed the consumer protection movement. Right, I don't remember some of the other issues, the Concerned Women for Progress, but I could clearly remember those two issues, you know.
Who were your allies?
Professor Mormid wrote a rather guidatory paragraphs. Pat Bino, you had deceased Thelma Henderson, who was also a driving force.
Any organizations?
In?
Any organizations?
There weren't. No, it was the trade union movement that gave us a space to lobby and bring forward women's issues. I would say that.
Who came up against you?
The government of the day.